So hello and welcome to the virtual launch of the People's Archive of Rural Ontario, or PARO as we'll call it today. I'm Dr. Josie Whitmer and I've been working as the coordinator of PARO this year. And I'm so excited to be involved in finally launching this archive of diverse stories from across rural Ontario today. So in learning from the places and people of rural Ontario, we acknowledge that the lands where we live, learn and work hold the ancestral connections and stories of Indigenous peoples since time immemorial. The People's Archive of Rural Ontario is committed to honoring and strengthening our relationships through respect and responsibility with the Indigenous nations across Turtle Island and across Ontario in particular. As a story archive, we are committed to seeking out and highlighting Indigenous voices and guidance in our stories and our governance, to strengthening our relationships with Indigenous people and communities in rural and remote areas of Ontario, and in promoting an open, flexible, and relational understanding of what rural means to different people and the ways in which Indigenous peoples may or may not relate to or embody rural identities. At the University of Guelph, we reside and work on the traditional territory of the neutral Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Métis peoples. Today, this place is home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, and it's an important act of reconciliation to speak to these ongoing connections to land, water, and beings, as well as to our shared responsibility to the spaces where we live, learn, and work. So to this end, PARO supports and adds our collective voices to the 94 calls to action from the Truth and Reconciliation Committee on Indigenous Residential Schools to never forget and to seek redress and healing for ongoing injustice. So with these commitments in mind, we are so excited to welcome so many of you today to this virtual space to celebrate the launch of PARO. So over the next 35 minutes or so, we will be providing an overview of what PARO is and our vision for the project. And we'll hear from the team of graduate student story curators who have spent the last few months facilitating storytelling and producing stories for the website. And we'll hear about their experiences in working with PARO. We then are so excited to welcome two special guests, Dr. Charlotte Yates, who's the President and Vice Chancellor of the University of Guelph, and P. Sainath, the founder editor of PARI, the People's Archive of Rural Ontario, or sorry, People's Archive of Rural India. And then we'll end off with a virtual tour of the website. And unfortunately, we'd said in our invitation that Minister Lisa Thompson was planning to join us as a third speaker, but she had something come up at the last minute. And so will not be joining us today, but wishes she could be here. And we know that some of her team at OMAFRA are present today as well in her stead. So PARO gratefully acknowledges support from the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council, the Francis and Ruth Riddlemeyer Professorship in Rural History, and the Canada Research Chair in Gender Justice and Development. And we are also grateful for the members of both the steering committee and the advisory committee, many of whom are here today, who have contributed their knowledge and enthusiasm to helping us get to where we are today in launching PARO. So speaking of the advisory committee, the chair of the committee, Senator Rob Black, also unfortunately could not attend today as he's currently on a flight, but he sent a video message for us to share with you all.
Hello everyone, I'm Senator Rob Black. Thank you for inviting me to attend the launch of PARO, the People's Archive of Rural Ontario. I am honored to virtually join you today and very pleased to serve as chair of the PARO Advisory Committee. Today's event marks the hard work of many to make PARO come to life. To all those involved in PARO's development, I thank you for your continued dedication to our rural communities. In my current role as senator, I've met with countless community leaders across rural Ontario to learn more about the concerns and needs of rural Ontarians. Time and time again, I have heard about the rural-urban divide and the need for urban Ontarians to better understand our rural culture. As you know, this new archive portal seeks to bridge urban and rural communities, creating a place where rural voices, stories, and experiences are valued, shared, and saved for all to enjoy. It's high time that the history of rural Ontario and of rural Canada is awarded the recognition it deserves. Everyone here today acknowledges the importance of rural communities and all they offer, providing food, fresh water, recreation, and resources for those living within and beyond their borders. I am confident that PARO will capture the resilience and revitalization of rural Ontario through the many stories of communities, individuals, and experiences pulled together in one place. Actually, I'm very excited about the whole idea and just wish my grandmother, Isabel Jane Gilder Black, was with us today. As an armchair writer and local historian, I am sure she would have been a wonderful contributor to this new archive portal. As chair of the advisor committee, I look forward to continuing to support the PARO team as they undertake cataloging rural Ontario's history for future generations to learn about and appreciate. This is a wonderful thing that the team is undertaking for all of us. Thank you again for including me in today's events.
Thank you, Rob. And just a reminder to everyone, please make sure that you're muted if you're not speaking. So it's now my pleasure to introduce Dr. Shaharda Srinivasan, who's an associate professor in the Department of Sociology and Anthropology at the University of Guelph and is the Canada Research Chair in Gender, Justice and Development. So Dr. Srinivasan is one of the faculty leads of PARO, and I'm going to invite her to provide an introduction to what PARO is and how it came to be and why it's so special.
Thanks, Josie. For many like me working in rural context, the idea of a repository of people's voices is instantly appealing. That was the effect of being exposed to the People's Archive of Rural India, PARO. Colleagues from the University of Guelph and from the Guelph community initiated the work on the People's Archive of Rural Ontario, PARO, in 2019. During that year, we also had the opportunity to host Sainath at the university. I mean a face-to-face hosting at the university in fall 2019. PARO, the People's Archive of Rural Ontario, is a freely accessible online community where everyday people can tell everyday stories about everyday lives in and about rural Ontario. PARO welcomes stories from all peoples and all parts of rural Ontario. PARO is founded on 4 principles. The first is privileging rural voices. PARO centers people as the experts of their own lives and facilitates the collection and circulation of their unaltered but curated stories. PARO intends to be a space for people to narrate their stories that are important to them on any aspect of their lives and in the form they choose to best represent them. The second principle is to align with rural needs. PARO is focused on supporting reconciliation, recovery, preservation, and resilience of rural Ontario and aims to be a flexible initiative with evolving practices and efforts in response to changing priorities and needs of people and communities in rural Ontario. Everyday stories by everyday people are very revealing about rural life at the individual, household, organizational, and community levels. The third principle is diversity and equity. PARO is grounded in an anti-oppressive approach to contribute to the establishment and maintenance of anti-oppressive communities, both online and offline. PARO welcomes submissions from all persons, particularly those who identify as Indigenous, racialized, having disabilities, and from persons of all sexual and gender identities. The final principle is open access. People's stories belong to people. PARO is committed to extending the circulation of knowledge in accessible and understandable ways, and therefore ensures the entire archive, audiovisual and written content within the archive is open to everyone online, free of cost or other barriers to engage with this work. It is indeed a proud and equally humbling moment to be able to launch the archive with an initial collection of 25 stories. Borrowing the Pari's tagline, everyday stories by everyday people in rural Ontario. We have been very fortunate to work with a group of amazingly passionate and energetic students who curated the first round of stories, laying the foundation of the People's Archive of Rural Ontario. Welcome to the launch. Over to you, Josie.
All right, thank you, Dr. Srinivasan. And I also just want to acknowledge Doctors Kathy Wilson and Belinda Leach as well, who were also co-founders alongside Shaharda of PARO here. So as Dr. Srinivasan just mentioned, there are many people involved in working on this archive and in starting up this work of documenting stories from rural Ontario storytellers so that we have this starting point to launch the website. So it has been an absolute joy to work with this team of graduate student story curators, including Barry Marshall, Jessica Lukowicki, Lauren Chang, Philip Rich, Tasha Falkner, and Vanessa Cunningham in this process. So we wanted to share with you a peek into the experiences of these story collectors and story curators. So we've created a video about the processes behind the stories that we see in the archive today.
Hi, I'm Vanessa. I was one of the story collectors with PARO, and what excited me most about being in this role was the chance to meet new people, listen to their stories, and learn from them. And I think what I learned through the process was how diverse the people and places of rural Ontario are. Every person that I interviewed seemed to have this passion for the work that they do, their way of life, the projects they're involved in, and the people that they love. So I think what I took away from that was to love your own story and to be proud of it and share it if you get the chance.
Hi there, my name's Phil and I was one of the story collectors for PARO. I really enjoyed this project. That was really interesting. And I got to learn a lot more about the regions and the people and the stories behind things that I'm really interested in, that I find to be important parts of Ontario, whether it was cycling or beer or deindustrialization and changing work and labor in Ontario. I learned a lot and I really enjoy getting to meet people and talk to people from all around the province.
I was really excited to have the opportunity to talk to people that I never really had a reason to talk to before. I could send them like a Facebook message or an email and say, hey, I'm working with this amazing organization and I would love to tell your story. Like, can we do that? I learned the importance of not only learning how to craft an interesting narrative or an important story, but most importantly, how to work together with someone to tell their story in a way that both you and them can be proud of. What I've learned is that it takes a lot of time, definitely, but it takes a lot of care and it takes a lot of listening.
What excited me most about being a PARO story collector is that I got to help rural Ontarians share their voices and to also deepen my connection to rural Ontario. In my role as a story collector, I learned that rural Ontario is more diverse and resilient than I ever imagined.
Hi, my name is Jessica Lukowicki and I am a PARO story collector. I was really excited to be involved in the PARO storytelling initiative, largely because I've grown up in cities most of my life, but in recent years have been a lot more interested and been spending a lot more time in rural and remote areas of Ontario through my own research and my personal interests. The stories that I got to hear through PARO were different to me because they allowed me the time and the space to connect with folks and individuals living in rural and remote parts of Ontario and to really learn about the challenges that they face as well as their priorities and opportunities for the future. So this was a really special project for me to be involved in.
Great, and thanks to all of the story collectors. I think most of you are here, or all of you are all here today. So thank you so much for all of your hard work. And to Dr. David Borish, who's our Knowledge Mobilization Associate, who put that video together. So now I'm very happy and honored to introduce to you Dr. Charlotte Yates, who is the President and Vice Chancellor of the University of Guelph, and she's going to provide some remarks on behalf of the university. So welcome, Dr. Yates, and thank you so much for being with us here today.
Thank you so much. And it's rather lovely to join this, be speaking after having heard those remarks about the involvement in the project. I can only imagine hearing people's stories can be such a transformative experience because you learn about other people's experiences and it gets you to reflect on your own experiences as well. So on behalf of the University of Guelph, it is my pleasure to welcome you to the launch of the People's Archive of Ontario. I am so delighted to be joining you here. It was great to hear the words of Senator Rob Black, who's been a longstanding supporter of the work at the University of Guelph. And I look forward to hearing from P. Sainath from the People's Archive of Rural India shortly as well. As we know, India's been in the news around rural affairs, and I'm sure he'll have lots to share with us about those activities and events. But last but certainly not least, we're fortunate to have many of the Ontario storytellers who have shared their stories with us this morning. I know many of you are University of Guelph alumni as well, and I want to just say a special thanks for participating in this and sharing some of the legacy that you bring with you. As we're talking about archives, I think in the context of storytelling, it's incredibly important to tell a little bit about the university's story. Many of us don't know that in 1873, the government of Ontario purchased 550 acres of land from F.W. Stone near Guelph for the purpose of establishing a school of agriculture. Along with the Ontario Veterinary College and the Macdonald Institute, the Ontario Agricultural College was one of the university's 3 founding colleges. Opened in 1903, the Macdonald Institute initially featured instruction for young women in nature study, domestic science, and domestic arts. Macdonald Institute grew into a world-class academic institution and was the premier home economics school in North America. Alongside food, the environment, agriculture, alongside our OVC, Macdonald Institute, rural communities are a focus of the teaching and research at the Ontario Agricultural College. Every day, students and researchers at both our Guelph and our Ridgetown campuses are studying community empowerment strategies, agricultural extension practices, rural quality of life measures, and even distance education options. And this work goes far beyond the classrooms and labs to working in the research fields, working in relationship with farmers, community leaders, and industry partners. It's one of the signatures areas, I think, of the University of Guelph, that we work in partnership with communities and that we are proud that we mobilize knowledge into action, just as we're seeing here with this new archive. The university's history and present are deeply rooted in our commitment to the prosperity and growth of rural Ontario, and that commitment will undoubtedly continue to shape our future as well. I was incredibly excited to see the work the university has been doing on the People's Archive of Rural Ontario because its mission aligns so closely with that of the university's mission to improve life. You cannot tell the University of Guelph's story without the stories of rural Ontario. This archive allows us to maintain and enhance those stories and share them with others across the country and around the world. I want to congratulate Shaharda, Josie, and the entire team whose hard work and vision has brought us to this launch and given us the chance to learn about the diverse stories, voices, and people that make up rural Ontario. Whether you are an alumnus or a rural community member, please know that the University of Guelph is always keen to collaborate and will always remain focused on healthy rural communities. Thank you for sharing your stories, and thanks for having me at this event.
Thank you so much, Dr. Yates, for your support and your enthusiasm for PARO and for being with us today. So as Dr. Srinivasan mentioned earlier, PARO was actually inspired by PARI, the People's Archive of Rural India, which is a beautiful and essential archive of life across rural India. And so we are honored today to welcome P. Sainath, who's the founder editor of PARI and is an award-winning journalist and author based out of Mumbai in India, although he's in Delhi today, I hear. So he's the author of the book, Everybody Loves a Good Drought, and was recently the recipient of the 2021 Fukuoka Grand Prize, which is one of Japan's top awards open to people from all Asian countries, which he received for investigating impoverished farming villages in India, and listening to voices from the rural population. So Sainath, we are so excited and honored to welcome you here today to share with us the importance of people's archives. So thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much, Josie. Thanks to all the organizers for giving me this opportunity to speak here. I'll go straight to the question, why do you need a people's archive? And what the heck is that anyway? Historically, actually all of us have grown up on rather romantic notions of ancient archives and libraries. But historically, and by the way, I was trained as a historian, not as a journalist, historically, most archives and many libraries actually served as sites of censorship, of state control, of violent conflict. We do have these romantic notions about, oh, the great libraries of Alexandria and Nalanda, and that there is some idea that these great repositories of knowledge were open, free, available to all. They never were. They had very strong exclusions of most of society. We should know, you go back to ancient India, the Brahmins of old created exclusions to keep people out and retain their monopoly of knowledge. You'll find texts, sacred texts, which prescribe the rules of punishment for those born outside the Brahmin caste who dared to listen to the scriptures in Sanskrit. Molten lac and tin would be poured in their ears. For those who dared to read the Sanskrit text, their eyes could be gouged out, and those who recited them could have a hot iron nail placed on their tongue. I'm not kidding you. You can read this in the Manusmriti. You can read it in the Gautama Smriti. These were the rules made as societies, elites have made for centuries, how to keep their monopoly over knowledge. By the way, in medieval England, for instance, you'll find that surveyors and recorders of land data were often attacked by the peasantry. A couple of them were even killed. Peasants and farmers figured out centuries ago that someone else coming to measure your land is a first step to someone else acquiring your land. And they weren't pleased with that and showed it in no uncertain matter. Archives have also been a source of a repository of what you can call protected privilege. Now, for instance, India fought a war with China in 1962. I think that's 59 years ago. The classification period for secret documents, all that died decades ago. But try accessing a single important document on the war. Impossible. The National Archive serves as a center for controlling that information and not allowing public access to it. Hence the need. I mean, if you go through all this, you'll see to break that protected privilege and to prevent the destruction of centers like you had at Alexandria and Nalanda in the ancient era. For that, you need archives that are controlled neither by governments and states nor by corporations and private profit. Thus, the need for a people's archive based on and concerned with the everyday lives of everyday people that can't be taken down by someone else, that can't be declared classified information and shut away for 59 years. Now, when you're working with those everyday people, you will need to build that archive with their consent, but within their context, with those everyday people involved in the creation of your output, by building it in collaboration with those communities. While, with ordinary people, not only involving with ordinary people, driving the content, and you foreground them in the credits. In that story, in the photographs you're seeing there, all those people in the salt pan workers are the ones who dominate the story, tell their story, and they drive the story. Okay. And lastly, you also have to foreground them in the credits. So it's about working with communities with consent, content, creation, collaboration, and credits, the 5 C's. If, I'm here today in Delhi because of what the media in India will not tell you, corporate-owned media will not allow, will not admit, is the largest peaceful democratic protest in the world in the last several years, and certainly the largest built during the year of the pandemic against all odds. A people's archive like we are, what do? How do we cover this? We don't cover it as dismissing these guys as, Luddites and things like that. We look at who are these protesters. We go to their villages. Who are their families? Why are they here? Why have tens of thousands of them gathered at the gates of Delhi and sat through one of the worst winters in 70 years, a horrible summer, a terrible rainy season, and are still there, 700 of them having lost their lives to COVID, to hypothermia, to you name it. Okay? That is a people's archive. You do it with people, and you are accountable. You are accountable to those people. I do hope that you will all go on to People's Archive of Rural India and have a look. We publish in 13 languages, and I hope you will do that too. Try publishing in the languages of native peoples as well. Then you will really be more and more encompassing. So, there is already a People's Archive of Rural Nova Scotia in Antigonish, which was established when I held the Cody Chair of Social Justice there. Though I didn't create it, it was inspired by PARO. So that's why you need a People's Archive in people's control, telling the stories of everyday people and everyday lives. Thank you.
I think we're all collectively clapping right now. Thank you so much, Sainath, for sharing your knowledge and experience and expertise. We're so grateful. And I think that, I know for me and probably everybody else, we're all leaving here a little more inspired now. So finally, I'd like to introduce Dr. David Borish, who's the Knowledge Mobilization Associate for PARO and sort of my collaborator or my comrade in getting all of these working pieces together to launch this archive today. So first of all, thank you, David, for all of your hard work on the website and social media and making all the videos. And now it's time to reveal the website. So David is going to spend a few minutes taking us on a virtual tour, and then we'll have a quick wrap up in the end.
Great, thank you very much, Josie. And let me know if you can see my screen this time. Hopefully you can.
We can.
Okay, awesome. Great, well, hi everyone, and welcome to the first real look of the People's Archive of Rural Ontario. We're really excited because it's been a lot of time and thinking and collaborations on how to make this a website that is accessible, that's easy to use, that's engaging, and most importantly, a platform that does justice to the stories of people living in rural Ontario. And really interesting to hear from People's Archive of Rural India, from Sainath. Your website has really been quite the inspiration for the work that we're trying to do. So thank you again for being here, but also for doing all the work that you've done in India and the inspiration for this work here. So right now I'm just going to go quickly over some of the key features of this website so that you have a general understanding of the work that we've already been doing and as well the work that is going to come with this archive moving forward. So starting with this homepage, as you can see, there's a slideshow of a few photos with some text. And on the last slide here, there's an option to share your story right off the bat. As you scroll down, there's a general overview of this archive and some of the things that we're trying to do, building this rural repository, focusing on making it accessible, multimedia, online, ever-growing repository, focusing on amplifying rural voices, prioritizing personal as well as community narratives of different rural challenges, rural resilience, a variety of different stories. So just trying to ground people in what this archive is about. We also have some options to follow us on our social media channels. We're just getting off the ground right now, but trying to build that following on a variety of channels, including YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. So if you're on those platforms, we'd really appreciate it if you could spread the word and give us a follow as well. And then there's options to view the collection, which we're going to be exploring in a few moments. And throughout the website, there are options to submit and share people's stories. And we're trying to make it as accessible as possible so that people feel welcome to actually contribute to this archive. And as we've been talking about before, it's not just about stories that are, Hollywood features or anything like that. We're talking about everyday stories of everyday lives in rural Ontario. So anyone is welcome to contribute. We've got an about page that has a brief overview of what PARO is about and what we're trying to do, including our vision, PARO's mission, some of our key principles that Shaharda explained earlier on, and then some information on why we believe the People's Archive of Rural Ontario is important and who can participate in the People's Archive of Rural Ontario. We also have a page about who we are, the people behind this work. And as mentioned before, it's taken a lot of collaboration to do this work in a way that is of quality work, ethically done, and interdisciplinary as well. And so we have some descriptions of some of our core team members. We also have some descriptions of some of our broader steering committee members. Again, people from a variety of different academic as well as professional backgrounds, and some information about our advisory committee members. people coming from different sectors in society, people coming from different worldviews, different disciplines, to try to contribute to this archive in a way that is all-encompassing and holistic. We also have some information about who our funding sources are, as well as our current partners. In this About section as well, we have a brief page about the story curators, and you already saw the video of some of the research assistants that have been involved in this work so far. This is a page dedicated to them as well, so that you can learn a little bit more about who was behind the actual curation of the stories, who were the students that were going out and collecting stories across rural Ontario this past summer and into the fall. And of course, this is a short list. As this archive grows, we anticipate the story curators page to grow as well. But hopefully this gives you a sense of some of the people behind collecting these stories. Now to get to the actual stories page, and this is really the core aspect, the heart of the archive itself. And just to give you a quick overview, this page is really where all the stories are placed. It's almost like a blog format where you can scroll down and check out all the different stories that we've been collecting so far. And it's been really exciting for everyone on our team to explore some of these stories, because they're just so diverse, from a story about Chinese restaurants in rural Ontario, a story about an Indigenous wild rice harvest in Northern Ontario, regenerative farming, a story about farmerettes, a story about musicians, a story about magicians and illusionists, a story about an intercounty baseball league. There's a story about an international music center. There's a story about archaeological findings on a farm plot, a story about Black history in Chatham, Ontario. The list goes on, and of course, I'm not doing any of these stories justice right now, but I hope that this is giving you at least a glimpse into the kind of stories that have been collected so far in our early stages. Every story on this collections page has a brief overview of the title. It has some information about the story curator, the date that it was posted, and then you can see here some categories. And if I scroll up to the top again, we've added a filter feature that allows people to go through these stories in a more organized manner. And so we've added some of these kind of overarching categories for now, including the environment, food, leisure, our creativity. Of course, these themes and these categories will probably be expanded on in the future. They'll probably become more nuanced as more stories come in, but these are the broad themes that we've identified so far. And so as a user, all you have to do is simply click on one of these categories, and then only the stories associated with that category will come up. So in terms of crisis and change, there are only 3 stories that come up that are associated with this category. I can also click on a different one, say our creativity, and now it's only the stories that are associated with rural creativity. At any point, you can go back to all stories, and this is the page that has all the stories collected so far. Now, just to dive into a few of these stories so you get a sense of what they actually look like. You can click the Read More button, and it'll bring you to the actual stories page. Every story has a photo right at the forefront so that it's visually grounding people in the story to come. There's some information about the title, the categories that it fit into, and then some information about how the story was put together. The author, the person that curated the storyteller, as well as the date that it was posted. Then it gets right into the story. All of the stories have text, so you can read about it. They have photos, so you can watch or take a look at them. You can look at the captions. You can keep scrolling down. At any point, you can click expand on any of the photos, and you can flip through the photos that are in the story. Sorry about this. Or you can just keep scrolling down and see the photos and the text together in the story itself. And a lot of stories have different information, not only the text, but information such as recipe lists or author information or links to find out more information about our organization. As you scroll down, there's an option to view related stories. Again, this is very much influenced by the People's Archive of Rural India. So in this case, you could check out some of these related stories, or you could go back to the All Stories page. So that was an example of one story that had photos and text, but other stories have other kinds of information as well. I'm going to click on this as an example, the story called Getting to Know Manoman on the Winnipeg River. And this story has a combination of text, but also video content. So at any point you can click on the video and you can watch some of the visual information that's embedded into the story itself. You can also click on different options to watch this video on YouTube if that's what you prefer. So it's a combination of text, of video. There's also photo content in the story. So really trying to showcase a diversity of multimedia information that does justice to the stories that are being told. If I just go back up to the stories page one more time and show one other example, if I'm going to go to creativity. So we've seen stories with text, with photos, with video. There's also options that people have been sharing their stories through audio. And in this case, this is a story about a musician. And at the very end of the story, there's an option to actually listen to some of the music that he has recorded. And I hope you can hear this.
I'm not perfect, but I try. It's not easy, but I get by. I never learned a single thing that wasn't on the fly, and it helps me to get by.
I hope we can all continue to listen to that song. It's a great one to listen to. So overall, I hope this gives you a general sense of the kind of diversity that we've been collecting in our early stages of a variety of different stories, and also trying to share this information through a variety of different mediums that are suitable for the story, whether it's through text, audio, video, or other ways. Just to give you a quick overview of some of the other portions of the website, we've got a resources page where in particular you can check out more multimedia. This is a page that is going to be focused on mainly video content as well as audio. So if you want to, take a look at the audio or the videos in the stories themselves, you can do that, or you can come to this page and check out some of the videos that we put together, both from our own end, but also from the stories themselves. And there's also an option to filter through some of the categories and only look at videos associated with those categories. And again, this is going to be an ever-growing list of multimedia. We also have a Rural Network page. And again, this is not just a website or an initiative that's about stories, but it's also about connections and collaborations and partnerships. And so the idea here is that we're trying to build out a network of different rural organizations, rural groups and initiatives and storytelling initiatives that are doing work either with PARO or groups that are doing work adjacent or related. And so again, this is going to be an ever-growing list of different groups, initiatives, organizations that are doing similar kinds of work. And then finally, we have a Getting Involved page. And we are, as I mentioned before, really just trying to expand this out and involve as many people as possible. If you think you have a story to tell, we want to hear it from you, whether it's a story about your own experiences, about someone else's experiences, or maybe it's trying to get in touch with us to collaborate on a story. We're open to any kind of stories that might fit with this archive. We also have a Partner With Us page that has a bit more information on how you can partner with us and the kinds of groups that we want to partner with, whether you're an individual, an organization, a local business, or an enterprise, or a donor. We want to hear from you. And then finally, just a very basic page on how to contact us. Again, we are always open to a conversation about rural stories or how you might be able to get involved in our work. And you can also follow us on social media. So I hope that gives you just a general sense of where we're at with this archive. We've collected about 25 stories so far, and we are hoping to collect many more in the years to come about a variety of different topics across rural Ontario. So thank you very much for taking a look at this, and I hope it inspires you to send in your own story.
Yes, thank you, David, for that great tour. So the website is live now, so you can all go and navigate around it for yourselves and read the stories and share links to the website or to particular stories with your family and friends. And as David mentioned, I think we have a slide coming up with our social media handles. It's Rural Ontario Stories on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. So we would love to hear from you with your stories, your ideas, your connections. Yeah, and just, if you know somebody who has a story, or if you have a story yourself, please do connect with us via the website or via social media or by email. So here's all of the information that you might need to get in touch. And we're running a little over time, so thank you so much for sticking around today and for attending and for your interest and enthusiasm for this project and for rural Ontario stories and storytellers. So yeah, thank you so much, and get in touch if you'd like to. Thank you so much, everyone. And that's the end. Scene.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you, Sainath.
Welcome. Thank you.